Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you a story. The things that we did when I was a kid, they keep coming back to me. The games that we played and the friends that we made keep haunting my memory. I get so nostalgic, remembering when the Biff Bat and the Yo-Yo were the craze. Garbo and Myrna Loy, Ambrose and Harry Roy, they were my childhood days. King George wore a monocle, we read the News Chronicle back in my childhood days. There was Candy and Len, Lady Astor and Bevin, back in my childhood days. We all used to cram on a 68 tram. The railways didn't have those long delays. The gentry played polo, Amy Johnson flew solo, back in my childhood days. We all used to sing songs recorded by Bing, back in my childhood days. There were carousel rides, we had short back and sides, back in my childhood days. I once saw a Zeppelin up in the sky. I saw the Crystal Palace all ablaze. We joined the Boy Scouts, or we grew up as lads, back in my childhood days. I remember my dad saying, things sure look bad. It never rains but what it pours. Then my mother would smile and say, wait for a while, things will get better, I'm sure. But they didn't get better, in fact they got worse. We were skint, boracic, lint, to coin a phrase. And to buy food and coal, they were drawing the dough, back in my childhood days. There was Elsie and Doris, Marlena and Maurice, back in my childhood days. There was Chesney and Bud and the great Lobby Ludd, back in my childhood days. Fishing with worms, all the women had perms. They didn't wear a bra, they called them stays. There was Popeye the Sailor and a 50 Bob Taylor, back in my childhood days. 10 fags were 4pence, a pint cost the same, back in my childhood days. Rhubarb and custard and corned beef and mustard, back in my childhood days. Licorice and lollipops, sherbet and acid drops, the rumba and the tango were the craze. We lived in the flats, we had kiss me quick hats, back in my childhood days. Whoa. Thank you very much. And as we say goodbye to 75, we say hello to 75. That is, hello to 75 minutes looking back over the past 75 years. Because if you're like me, ladies and gentlemen, and you like a little bit of nostalgia, you couldn't be in a better place than where we are at this very moment, the television theatre. Because before this was a television studio, it was a music hall, the Shepherd's Bush Empire, one of the most famous music halls here in London. And if you were around in the 1900s, they were great years, very, very interesting years. The Boer War had just finished. The Wright brothers had just invented their first bar of coal tar soap. Arthur Askey had just been born, which shows you how undernourished the children were in those days. And in 1901, Edward VII came to the throne for a brief reign. Wasn't so much a reign as a short, sharp shower. In fact, 75 years later, he did a television series and it ran twice as long. But if you'd been one of the working class people coming to the theatre in those days, in the 1900s, you wouldn't have been sitting there where you are, not in the posh seats, because they couldn't afford them. You'd be sitting right up there in the gallery. Because it's different tonight. You've all paid the same price to get in. Nothing. And it wouldn't have cost you a lot more in those days. I went to a theatre the other night and I paid 30p, 6 shillings for an ice cream. Now, for sixpence in those days, look what you could get. You could get the price of admission, a programme, a bottle of lemonade, an ice cream and typhoid. But that's how it was. And if you'd been sitting out there at that particular time, these are the songs you'd have heard, and this is the sort of entertainment you'd have been watching.
Queen of swell society, fond of fun as fun can be. When it's on the strict duty, I'm not too young, I'm not too old, not too timid, not too bold. Just the kind you like to hold, just the kind for sport, I'm told.
I'll give her a posy.
Do me a favor, do.
It's repairable.
You know I'd do as much for you if only you put me amongst the
Go on a smile, I'd run for a mile.
Goes with the curly.
Oh, I say, that one is so gay.
They'll enjoy themselves and so will I if you put me amongst the girls.
giants to guard me. Fountains and statues all over the place, and the metropole staring me right in the face. I alone, it's a trifle drafty, but I look at it this way, you see. If it's good enough for Nelson, then it's quite good enough for me. Good morning, Lord Rosebery. Just back from your honeymoon? Nice to see you up and about again. Is the wife well? Good air. I know it's a trifle drafty, but I look at it this way, you see. If it's good enough for Nelson, then it's quite good enough. It's quite good enough. It's quite good enough for me. Now, that sort of entertainment was very popular in the 1900s, and to give you an idea how popular it was, there were 40 music halls in London alone and 200 more in the provinces. But it was tough on performers because, although they only did a short act in those days, sometimes they were expected to work 4, 5, and sometimes 6 theatres the same night. Now, it was all right if you were making money and you could afford a handsome cab, but some of them had to do it on foot, and they took their life in their hands. There was a performer named Billy Merson who sang the song "The Spaniard Who Blighted My Life." Now, imagine him trying to cross Carnaby Street dressed like this. Or I wouldn't give you much for the chances of G.H. Churgwin, who was known as the White-Eyed Kaffir, crossing Birmingham like this. The one performer they all loved, and they all loved very, very much, was Little Titch. He was only 4 feet tall, and they say that when he went to have a suit measure, they had to get a limbo dancer to do the inside leg measurements. But he used to knock 'em cold with a dance that he used to do, and we've got this actually on film. You'll have to excuse the quality because it's 75 years old. Imagine having to do that 5 or 6 times a night. No wonder he was only 4 feet tall. And these are the actual boots that little Titch was wearing in that film. They're 75 years... And look, I mean, they'd slow Rudolf Nureyev down a bit, wouldn't they? Crush puppies. He was very popular with stage managers, little Titch was, because this was the days before Insecticide, and by the time he'd finished this dance with these boots on, there wasn't a live Beatle left on the stage. But variety became respectable in 1912 because King George V held his very first command performance at the Palace Theatre. Now, all the big names were in it, names of the day. They were names like Harry Lauder, you can see there, Vesta Tilley, Harry Tate. Everybody except this one, Marie Lloyd. And they reckon that Marie Lloyd's lyrics that she did, they reckon that they were too suggestive for the king's ears. Now, see what you think. I've got a copy of her music here. It says, I always hold with having it if you fancy it. If you fancy it, that's understood. And suppose it makes you fat. I don't worry over that. Because a little of what you fancy does you good. I can't see a lot wrong with that, can you? Now, in 1914, the war started, and the variety stars went out to entertain the troops. And with one particular song, they became recruiting agents.
On Sunday, I walk out with a suit. On Monday, I'm taken by a talk. On Tuesday, I'm out with a baby Boy Scout. On Wednesday, on Thursday, I gang out real sporty. On Friday, the captain of the crew. But on Saturday, I'm willing, if you'll only take the shilling, to make a man of any one of you.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you Lucifer to light your fag, smile, boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. It's a long way to Tipperary. It's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye, Piccadilly. Goodbye, Piccadilly. Farewell, Leicester Square. Farewell, Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Mademoiselle from Armitiers, Hollywood. Mademoiselle from Armitiers, Hollywood. Mademoiselle from Armitiers, Inky Pinky Hollywood. Goodbye, Dolly, I must leave you. Oh, it breaks my heart to go. Something tells me I am needed at the front to fight the foe. See, the soldier boys are marching, and I can no longer stay. Hark! I hear the bugle calling. Goodbye, Dolly Gray. Goodbye, goodbye. Wipe the tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know. I'll be tickled together. Don't cry, don't sigh. Look, there's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin, naboo, toodaloo, goodbye. Goodbye. And of course, not all the songs during the 1914 war were rousers. They had some beautiful ballads, like this one that was constructed so well and is still being sung today. If you were the only girl in the world, and I were the only boy, nothing else would matter in the world today. We could go on loving in the same old way. Garden of Eden, just made for two, with nothing to mar our joy. I would say such wonderful things to you. There would be such wonderful things to do if you were the only girl in the world and I were the only boy. Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden. Just made for two. With nothing to mar. I would say such wonderful things to you. I would say such wonderful things to you. There would be such wonderful things to do if you were the only girl in the world and I were the only boy. And that song was made famous by a man named George Roby, who was a star for 40 years. You know, I've just realized something that's longer than I've lived. But George's eyebrows gave him something in common with another famous entertainer of today. That's right, Dennis Healy. And after the war, there was a fashion for speaking comics as opposed to sort of singing comics. And one of the first that ever appeared doing patter was a man named Billy Bennett. And he first appeared like this. And then a bit later on, he got rid of that army uniform, and all he kept was the moustache. And he had this very forceful delivery that went like this. My wife's mother's got a long ear hanging from her nose. Every time she sneezes, it cracks like a whip. I gave her a pinch of snuff the other day and she flogged herself to death. A little monologue. They didn't have maps for soldiers in that land of Gunga Din, so they picked the toughest warrior out and tattooed on his skin. On his back, he's got Calcutta. Lower down, he's got Bombay. And you'll find him sitting peacefully on the road to Mandalay. Now, it was about this period, before and after the 20s, that ragtime and jazz came in. And comedians, besides having to sing and being able to patter and to talk, they also had to learn to dance as well, because this is the sort of thing that was happening.
So don't do the castle walk.
From me,
Charleston.
think of what you might be.
Oh, I love Charleston.
I'm disappointed in you and your ways.
I'm double jointed. This new sensation like syncopation.
Will you let me know why?
I love Charleston.
That's the sort of thing I would never do. So leave it behind and give your mind to something new.
Charleston, 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 with you, with you. I'd rather Charleston, Charleston, 'cause everybody's doing it. Yeah, everybody's doing it. Yes, everybody's doing it. Charleston now.
Now, that must have surprised you, but it shouldn't have done because I'm the one that taught Lionel Blair to dance. But I don't want to talk about my failures. Come on, kids. Now, as if they didn't have troubles enough in the variety theatres, in 1928, talking pictures came along. And I can remember sitting in our little cinema, where I used to live in Rotherhithe, and the first talkie that was there, it was there for 3.5 years. Not because it was good, nobody knew how to get it out of the projector. We used to have a little rundown cinema, they couldn't even afford an usherette. They trained a cat to walk backwards down the aisle. But I remember the first talkie was there starred a man called Al Jolson as the singing fool. And of course, everybody knew him. Is it true what they say about Dixie? Does the sun really shine all the time? Do the sweet magnolias blossom and everybody's dog? The monkey eating possum, so they don't eat no more. Is it true what they say about Swanee? In a dream on a stream so sublime. Do they laugh? Do they laugh? Like they say in every song. If it's true, that's where I belong. You don't, you. Now, of course, with the Hollywood invasion, British stars had to get into films, and they did this very, very successfully. There were names like Will Hay, George Formby, Gracie Fields, and strangely enough, they became bigger box office than the Hollywood stars. And here's a very brief reminder of some of the successful films that were around in that era.
Congratulations. Go. Thank you. Good bit of work. Thank you. Splendid show, Porter. Oh, all in a day's work.
I'll see that you get recognition in the proper quarter.
Oh, don't thank me. Thank Glass.
Grand old engine, that. 90 years old.
Yes, good for another night.
The other day I got an invitation to go and join a nudist colony. And as the life was healthy and in the open air, I trotted off as happy as can be. With me granddad's flannelette nightshirt, I walked up to the door. Someone said, now don't make a fuss, just take off your clothes and you'll be like us. Well, I was bashful, so I stayed by myself, for with the girls I didn't want to flirt. But when I was asleep, they all came and had to peep at me granddad's flannelette shirt. Lordy, lordy, me granddad's flannelette shirt.
And you won't see films like that again, ladies and gentlemen, not unless you've got a television set. And you'll see them again and again and again. But the funny thing is, I love the old films on the telly. Adore them. Now isn't it nice to see those old-time movies on your television screen? The ones with Greta Garbo over the dish. Shirley Temple, Clara Bow and Lillian Gish. Don't you want to applaud when you see Eddie Cantor roll his googly eyes? And little Edward G says, now listen to me, I'm running this joint, understand you guys? What a wonderful thing when you hear a young bing sing the blue of the night. The great W.C., my little chickadee, always fills me with delight. Aren't you dancing on it when you see Fred Astaire? I drop what I'm doing, it's my favorite viewing, those old-time movie shows. Now isn't it nice to see the Three Marx Brothers? Oh yeah. Somebody's in for the house detective. William Powell, Sweet Myrna Lloyd, Charles Boyer and Hedy, oh what a joy. Cary Grant, Leslie Howard, Ronald Colman, Noel Coward, as British as the Rose. I love them, adore them, I do my nut for them in those old-time movie shows. Ah, what pleasure it brings when Chevalier sings, I love you, Louise. The Sam Goldwyn Follies, the Platinum Dollies, they make me go weak at the knees. Now isn't it nice when Cagney says to Bogart, you dirty rat, you. The pathos, the drama, who needs Cinerama? Give me an old-time movie show. That's what I said, folks, an old-time movie show. Because everybody wants to get in the act. That's the snuff talking to you. Don't forget that. Now, although films had affected theatre attendances, they still managed to carry on. And that's hardly surprising because there were some great performers around, especially in the 30s and 40s. You ask anybody who was the greatest stand-up comedian in the 30s and 40s, and almost everyone will say Max Miller. How do you want them, lady? Do you want them out of the white book, out of the blue book? Listen. I go home the other night, it's dark. I don't want to put the light on. I've been down to take my shoe off. Suddenly I hear a voice, Pretty Buttercup. I turn round, it's not a soul there. I've been down again, same again, Pretty Buttercup. I rush upstairs, the wife's laying in bed. I said, get up, we got burglars. She said, how do you know? I said, every time I've been downstairs, somebody says, Pretty Buttercup. She said, get in bed. That was me saying, bring the bucket up. Now listen, now here's the funny thing. That is the funny thing, isn't it? I get out of it. Now, another great performer of that time was Leslie A. Hutchinson, Hutch. And his gimmick was a great big white handkerchief that he used to mop his brow with. And if there's any truth, he used to do this because he was perspiring, you see. And if there's any truth in the saying that the human body is 80% water, he must have got through a legful every night. So don't let them begin, the begin. Let the love that was once a fire remain an ember. Let it sleep like the dead desire. Only remember when they began. Oh yes, let them begin, make them play. Tell the stars they will there before return above you. Till you whisper to me once more, darling, I love you. And we suddenly know what heaven we're in. when they began for picking. Now, another funny man off the stage as well as on was a man named Rob Wilton. They tell a story about him going into a pub one night and there was a fella there with his head in his hands crying, saying, "Nobody loves me, nobody loves me." He said, "Oh, come on, come on." He put his arm around and said, "Come on, of course they do." He said, "No," he said, "nobody loves me." He said, "Oh, come on, have a drink. What will you have?" And the fella says, I'll have a double brandy." He said, "By heck, no wonder no one bloody well loves you." Here he is in a very famous sketch called The Fireman. Now, this is a scene where a frantic woman has dashed into the fire station saying her house is on fire.
Oh, please, hurry.
Just a minute, lady, just a second. We work on a system here. I mean, you can't... It's a matter of... Arnold? Oh, what are they doing? I see Chelsea lost again on Saturday. Oh, don't wait now, lady. Just slip along. Ask them to keep it going a bit, will you?
Oh, do come along as quickly as ever you can.
With that, and they ought to be here. I don't know. I'll sack the whole blinking bunch of them. Hello? Who's that? Oh, good. Well, where's Arnold? Where is he? Oh, never mind about the football sweep. There's more important things in the world than that. Would you believe football sweeps and people's lives at stake? I don't know. What have I drawn? Another tanner gone west. Hello? Is that you, Arnold? Well, don't keep going away. There's a fire now in Grimshaw Street, and I'm here by myself. Have you got any petrol? I know it's no good for putting fires out, you. Have you got enough petrol to take you there? What, enough to get there and not get back? Oh, well, Blanche, no good going if you can't get back, is it? Oh, I see, Arnold. Oh, well, now I understand. So you think you can manage then, eh? Oh, it's a pretty big fire. Should be now. Oh, yeah, well, I'll leave that to you and Harry, do you see? I wanted it, and I say, Arnold, take the dog with you. It'll be a run for him, will you?
What timing that man had, eh? Now, that may surprise you, but that was made in 1932. And they were the depressed years. There was Great Depression on, and the people needed something to laugh at. I can remember those years very well. I mean, we had no money, no future. I know that we used to, as kids, used to be sent food parcels and clothes parcels from society people in Mayfair. I was the only kid in class that wore a top hat, frock-tail coat, and riding boots. My brother was luckier. He had trousers. I remember once I got a pair of shoes. They had no toes, no heels, no soles. I wore them for a week before I found out they were spats. And the favourite pastime of the women living around that way was babies. They used to have lots of babies. My mother had 6, and she had a small family. There were houses around about where they had 16, 17, 18 children. We had a woman live 3 doors away from us. She had 17 children. And some days you'd pass her front room, and you'd see her sitting there praying that her husband would get a day job. Preferably in a sawmill. Some of those poor devils hadn't seen their feet for 20 years. If they missed a year, the maternity hospital used to send them a reminder. And the mood of the day was summed up by two performers named Flanagan and Allen. Hometown, want to wander round your back streets, see you tumble down old Shack Street. I'd love to walk in on those corny country cousins of mine. Hometown, where the doves are softly cooing, where there's always nothing doing. I'd get a welcome from those corny country cousins of mine. Now there's an old schoolhouse door we used to tumble through at 4, and a small candy store where I could go a dozen lollipops and come for more. Hometown, where the garden trees are shady, where our Edie was a lady. I'm going back to see those corny country cousins of mine. Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away. Underneath the arches, on cobblestones I lay. Every night you'll find me tired out and worn, happy when the daylight comes creeping, heralding the dawn, sleeping when it's raining, and sleeping when it's fine. I hear the trains rattling by. Pavement is my pillow, no matter where I stray. Underneath the arches, I dream my dreams away. Hitler and Goring, and the whole world was warring back in my young man's days. And Spitfires flew over the white cliffs of Dover back in my young man's days. On September the 3rd, all the sirens were heard, and London was a city all ablaze. There were Home Guard in battle dress, soldiers and ATS, back in my young man's days. And so the war came, and suddenly you couldn't get this, you couldn't get that, and the Yanks were getting all the other. Everybody thought that Hitler started the last war. It wasn't true. It was Vera Lynn's agent. And I remember when we joined up, we were told about the force's sweetheart, Vera Lynn, and it came as a big surprise to us, because up till then, we'd always thought it was this big ATS girl that hung around the Kemp Gates. A girl we called Aldershot Lil. An act. She was 14 stone, and her speciality was conscientious objectors. Hence the expression, if you can't have a fight, get a big hat. But the big thing in those days was radio, and especially after the war. I remember a show called John Sharman's Music Hall, and we used to fight to get on this program. It was sort of an opportunity knocks, because young comedians or young entertainers could be heard by millions and millions of people. We had a fella turn up, and we were very amateurish, you know, and I was going to tell you, a fella turned up once there, only been a professional for 2 or 3 weeks. And his name was Frankie Wells, and they had great hopes for this young man. And when he arrived, they said, could we have your music? And a man named Ray Jenkins used to conduct the orchestra in those days. He said, can I have your music? And he gave him a 6-penny piano copy. And he said, what's this? He said, it's my music. He said, but I've got 38 musicians here. He said, oh, could they crowd round? I got a big break in a radio show in the early 50s called Educating Archie. And the star of that show was Archie Andrews. So for the next 3 years, I spent a lot of time talking to a block of wood. It was like talking to the wife's mother. And I saw Archie recently, and he wasn't well. He had Dutch elm disease. But he's here tonight. Hello, Archie. I've arrived, and to prove it, I'm here.
Hello, Mr. B. How nice to see you.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, they remember, don't they? Here, Mr. B, what about doing one of the jokes that we did in our particular show?
All right, Archie, which one shall we do?
What would happen if pigs could fly?
I don't know, Archie. What would happen if pigs could fly?
Bacon would go up.
If you think I'm bad, you should have seen Peter Brough.
Here, Mr. B, why don't we do a song that we did in the show?
Oh, Archie, they don't want to hear me sing. We do. Oh, all right. I'll take the legs from some old table.
Oh, that's good.
I'll take the arms from some old chair. I'll take the neck from some old bottle. And from the horse, I'll take the head. I'll take the hands and face off a clock. And Archie, when I'm through, I'll get more loving from that dummy than I ever got from you. Than I ever got from you.
Very good, Mr. B. You know
what? Oh, we had some great people in that show, didn't we, Archie?
Yes, we did, Mr. V. Yes, we did. Yeah.
There was Julie Andrews, wasn't there? You remember Julie Andrews? Tony Hancock. Do you remember his catchphrase? Flipping kids. Harry Seacombe. See Harry there? Look. Of course, he was slim in those days, wasn't he? Only weighed 16 stone then. And there was Hattie Jakes. See Hattie there? And she later teamed up with the writer of the show, Eric Sykes, and Eric Sykes turned out to be one of the funniest men on television.
You'll have... Harriet! Oh, she knows I can't sleep with the light on. Pleasure mad, some of them. Oh. Well, what are you staring at? You never seen a tiller girl before? That's all, folks. hanging on the lights.
One of my greatest friends, Eric Sykes here. In the 50s, I started making gramophone records. I don't know if you remember the one that went, why does everybody call me? Yes. I thought you'd remember that. Do you remember Tulips from Amsterdam? Yes. You Need Hands? Yes. Good, that'll save me singing them. A young fella came up to me once, he said, I've written a song. He said, it will suit you. I had a look at it. It was a good song. And I said, are you a songwriter? He said, no. He said, it's the first thing I've ever written. Well, later on, he wrote the score of Oliver. His name was Lionel Bart. But this is one of the first songs he ever wrote. Well, now they've changed our local pally into a bowling alley.
And things ain't what they used to be.
There's tits with drain-pipe trousers and Debs in coffee houses.
And things ain't what they used to be.
There used to be trams, not very quick, got you from place to place.
But now there's just jams, half a mile thick, stay in the human race.
I'm walking late, stuck parking meters outside our doors to greet us.
Now things ain't what they used to be.
Monkeys flying round the moon, we'll be up there with them soon. Things ain't what they used to be. Once our beer was frothy,
But now it's frothy coffee.
well, things ain't what they used to be. It used to be fun, down in our mum, paddling down South End, but now it ain't done. Never mind, chum,
Paris is where we spend our outings.
Grandma tries to shock us all doing knees up rock and roll.
Things ain't what they used to be.
We used to have stars, singers who sang a pretty melody. Now they're buying guitars, plinkety-plonk, backing themselves with free chords only. Once we danced from 12 to 3. I've got news for Elvis P.
Things ain't what they used to. Did the lot we used to. Things ain't what they used to be.
And that Lionel Bart must have had a lot of foresight, because things ain't what they used to be. In the theatre, we became more permissive. You asked Lord Longford, Mary Whitehouse. Every time you switched onto those two, they were talking about pawn shops. And I was getting worried about that, because my mother used to be in one every Monday morning. Because they were different then. They had 3 brass balls hanging outside. Not 6 fellas in dirty raincoats. And then the shows, they got really sort of wild. I was at the opening night of a show called Oh, Calcutta. I couldn't believe my binoculars. On the night I was there, a vicar stood up in the back row and objected. So they gave him a seat in the front. But for the first time in show business history, we beat the Americans at their own game. And the biggest change came in pop music. It came in a big way, and we owed this to 4 of the most talented young men we ever produced, the Beatles. And they affected all the songs that followed up, right up to the 1970s.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. Can't find it love, can't find it love, can't find it love. I'll buy you a diamond ring, my friend, if it makes you feel alright. I'll get you anything, my friend. money, money can't buy me love. Can't buy me love. Can't buy me love. Can't buy me
I saw the light on the night when I passed by her window. I saw the flickering shadows of love on her blind. She was my woman. As she deceived me, I watched and went out of my mind. No man could free.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen, from the Beatles to the Bay City Rollers. And so we come to the 70s. And do you realize that one day these will be the good old days? I was sitting there thinking the other day, what will it be like in the year 2000? It's only 25 years away. And suddenly I thought to myself, my goodness, I should be nearly 60. And I thought, I wonder what I'll be doing then. Maybe I'll be back in this very theatre in a TV show on the Son of Michael Parkinson show.
What's that, son? What do I remember about the old days? Well, young man, I remember them vividly. Vividly. I'm not going too fast for you, am I? Do I what? Do I remember your father, Michael Parkinson? Oh, yes, yeah. Not to talk to. No, of course, you couldn't get a word with him edgeways. Not unless you were Muhammad Ali. Theatres? Yes, oh yes, we used to have theatres all over the place in those days. I remember one theatre, the old Victoria Palace. It's not there anymore now. They had a manager there, and when you were a new act, he used to wait for you to walk on that stage, see? As soon as you got to the middle of the stage, he used to walk outside the theatre, across the road. He used to stand on the other side of Victoria Street. Now, if he couldn't hear that audience applauding, you got the sack. I had a bit of luck, he got run over. I remember who? Cliff Richard. Oh, yeah, he was a lovely lad, Cliff Richard. Everybody said he wouldn't last. Now look at him, Archbishop of Canterbury. Dean Martin, yeah, I met Dean Martin in this very theatre. I had a drink with him, one lunchtime. I remember what was in the drink. There was vodka, rum, gin, Angostura bitters, ginger ale and ice. And you drank it with a feather duster in your hand. Gave you something to do while you were up on the ceiling. I used to do a bit of singing myself in those days. In this theatre, 25 years ago, I walked down on this stage and I sang one of the most popular numbers of 1975.
I know I said that I was leaving, but I just couldn't say goodbye. It was only self-deceiving to walk away from someone who means everything in life to you. You learn from every lonely day. I've learned and I've come back to say, let me try again. Let me try again. Think of all we had before. Let me try once more. We could have it all. You and I again. Please believe me, or I'll die. Please let me try again. I was such a fool to doubt you, to try to go it all alone. There's no sense in life without you. For all I do is just exist and think about the chance I've missed. To fake is not an easy task, but pride, such a foolish mask. Let me try again. Let me try try once more. We could have it all, you and I again. Please believe me, or I'll die. Please let me try again. And that's about it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this stroll down memory lane. Maybe some of the songs that we've done tonight will fade away in a few years' time, but there's one will be around on nights like this for many a year to come. Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot for the sake of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll take account of kindness yet for the sake